Good evening and welcome to the Linux Saloon. I'm Nate, and with me are a whole panel of people. I have Eric and Steve, as well as Eris, to keep the show on. Well, it's kind of on task, mostly on target, and a whole range of guests. So, Rick, thanks for being here. Colin, Penguin. Is your name actually Penguin? Is that what you want us to call you? Okay, Penguin,
We've
Dan,
always
Jinda.
done Penguin
Yeah,
ever
that's
since
fine.
Biddle, so
I was just thinking. Peter is here. We have Vince and the one and only Dolphin. Not the file manager, but Dolphin Oracle, the man that makes MX possible, or one of the many that make it possible. So thank you very much for being here. So
I
this,
better behave myself now.
yes, absolutely
Thank
better
you.
behave. So each show we're going to have a talk about a Linux project. Generally distribution, today will be MX Linux, but it could be centered on a desktop environment or application. Anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion. So how is everybody?
Doing well.
MX, buddy.
Great.
Excellent.
Excellent. Glad. So on the docket today, we're going to talk about MX Linux for our distro exploration. We're going to check the menu for the next distro cocktail. We have a short news flight, a community free pour, and our last call. But first, what have you been Linuxing, Eric? I know it's not quite Linuxing, but it's pretty darn close.
It's not.
It's Linux adjacent.
It's actually computing. Yes, exactly. So I don't know why, but late last week, I was sort of sitting here doing things on my computer, and it occurred to me that I was not enjoying using my mouse. And I'm like, okay, what's my alternative? And it occurred to me that in years ago, I was one of those goobers who liked these things.
Ah.
Yes, and not the one where you use your fingers, but the one where you actually use your thumb.
Okay.
And so I immediately went and thought, okay, I definitely need to try this again. So I ordered the Logitech, whatever this is, something 55, something, and it has, it's wireless and everything. But I'll tell you what, it was like, what do they say? You never forget how to ride a bike or something. Like as soon as I started using it, it was like, oh, this is so much better. So I'm back to using my thumb trackball. And I was just curious, does anyone use a trackball? Is it, I think for a while there, it seemed like, because the mouse was sort of a new thing, at a certain point in the 80s, and, and trackballs were kind of there as well. And there was a lot of like open thinking about what can a peripheral be, a pointing device like, and we've all sort of settled on either an external mouse or a touchpad. But I was just curious, is there anyone out there that's still using a touch ball or a trackball? Because this thing it's amazing. It really is. It's a very, very pretty thing. It has like these neat little ridges in it, and I don't know. It's just.
I never could get my brain to sync up with one of those.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I actually like using them, except I broke mine about 4 or 5 months ago. I haven't even gotten it replaced, so I'm stuck with one of these. But I do play unless if I'm gaming, and then I like these, but not for anything else.
Well, the
The
chat seems
biggest-
to have lit up because we have like Present Arm Linux. He says, well, no, he hasn't used it since Missile Command. Never mind. But Gimpy Stick says that he uses one, and I have to say that last time I played Centipede, I wished I had one, but I don't have one.
There
But I
you
think
go.
for Centipede, I wanted the big one where I can use my whole palm.
Right, you
so-
can hit it and
Right.
spin it really fast.
It makes me
I
think.
prefer this over the mouse.
Really?
And it's funny, Dan, you say that because I can't use a controller. I try to use those, and I'm terrible with them.
I can't game without one. And it's really, it's really great that somebody turned me on and told me, you can use a game controller with Linux. And I'm like, you're kidding. And I'm like, he's like, no, I got 3 or 4 of them. You can get a PlayStation one. The best one that gets the Xbox one. It seems to work the best. Not only that, they're more indestructible. And a few others on the market work great with Linux, especially if you're using Steam with Proton. The Steam client knows exactly what to do with one of those.
Yeah, it's more, and the Steam client is more compatible with the Xbox because I have a PlayStation one, and a lot of the times I have to tell Steam what to do with it.
Right. Yeah,
I was gonna say,
after looking at the other ones, the Xbox One is the most rugged. So if you're a violent person and like to chuck it through the wall and everything else, this thing will probably take it.
well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So I was looking at old computers, and they had these. It was something that HP did. It was like mid '80s, and instead of a trackball or mouse, they had thumb wheels, like a vertical and a horizontal one, right on
Oh,
the
geez.
keyboard. And I thought that was a really clever way because your hand doesn't have to go very far; it just goes to the upper right corner of the keyboard.
So when I met my wife, she had one of the original Mac Apple laptops, and those had a built-in little trackball instead of a touchpad, and you would use the ball to move the pointer around on the screen, and then it had so it was like a built-in trackball, and I've never seen another system that was like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
the
remember
original,
those.
one of the original Gateway Solo devices had, I don't know if you remember Gateway, the cow spotted
Yes.
computers. So they had a laptop that didn't have any space for a trackpad, or at the time, the pointy stick was still the thing people were going with, and they put a little trackball on theirs. That was kind of cool. The only trackball I have is we had a what do you call it, a wireless keyboard to operate our television computer, and it had the mouse buttons on the left hand side and the trackball on the right. So it was a thumb trackball. You just go over here, and it was a two-handed mouse. Basically, is what it was. It was pretty nice. I liked it.
The thing so far, I mean, it's just being accurate for me and less, I guess, stressful on my wrist and stuff, is this sits in one spot. So you think about, a mouse, you need to have at least some amount of room to move a mouse around. And I'm on a fairly small space where I am here. So it's fairly convenient to have this, which just sits in one spot, and then I can, and it's also very quick. Like I can get from all the way across the screen just very, very quickly. So yeah, I've been doing a combination of like video editing and web design and just general computing and stuff. And it's really been like, I'm so glad that I decided to try it again. So anyway, just wasn't sure if anyone still, I mean, you have to wonder sometimes, like things like that, do they even make them anymore? Have they fallen so far out of fashion that they just aren't around anymore? So I was happy. And this Logitech's great. Hopefully it lasts a good long time. But
That's cool.
I've seen people say that they, instead of using the ball that came with it, they'll replace it with a heavier like ball bearing. And apparently that makes it a little more accurate because it's so heavy. So I may try that. And apparently they're not very expensive. So
Would do is take it apart.
It just pops right up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so it just sits in the socket. I mean, it's just barely in there, and so it just sort of pops in, and yep.
Well, paint me green and call me Geeko. That's great.
I actually like the idea that the mouse just sits there. That's pretty good because you don't have to use all this space on the desk, which is a really good idea. Never thought of that.
And if you're moving like along, so video editing, if I'm grabbing something over here, or I'm trying to scroll fast or something, doing that with a mouse can be repetitive. And I found myself having to like pick up the mouse and move it around a lot. And this it seems to work pretty well. And it has extra buttons for like forward and back, and it works great. Scroll mouse or scroll wheel in the middle, and I took to it immediately. There was no like,
can make you feel like you're rowing a boat.
yeah.
So,
All right,
Eric,
well,
a question. Underneath the ball, is it like a light source, like a not regular mouse?
Let's see. It's a laser.
Okay.
Yeah, so
It's
you
not-
don't see the light, but it's a
Yeah.
laser. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
so
not
it's
thinking,
not.
because I remember in the old mice with the balls underneath, you had to get a tweezers to pull all the lint off the roller.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know.
I
It's
remember
it's
doing
tracking
that.
the surface, and I actually did see that the people that have tried the ball bearing actually had to scar the surface a little bit so that it wasn't
Okay.
too shiny, because I guess it's reading the surface of the ball.
Oh, okay. So it's actually not different
Alright.
than an optical mouse. It's the ball instead.
Exactly. It's just tracking the surface of the ball instead of
That's cool.
It's probably the same exact sensor, honestly.
Yeah,
All
probably.
right, so you're gonna wear out your thumb. So we'll just thumb it to the next section.
Yeah, thumbs up to that.
So tonight we're talking about what are we talking about? No, MX Linux 21 Wildflower, right?
I thought it was OpenSUSE. I keep
I thought it
forgetting.
was peppermint.
Yeah. Well,
It's
yeah, this is
always
the new
open source.
peppermint.
By
All right,
the
but
way,
we're going to talk about some rules first. You know,
Right.
the intent is to talk about the different aspects of the OS and discuss the experience after using it. This is a discussion that by which only objective and constructive will be its product. Not objective opinions like this is garbage is not helpful. Rather, if you say I wish I had this feature or I really need this feature that allows me to, you are being beneficial to the conversation. The point is to highlight the positives, but not ignore the lowlights of the project. Remember, this is a labor of love for some, and let's not poo-poo on it. And let's give everybody else a chance to talk and not monopolize the conversation. Okay, Peter? No. So, Eris, how did the distro straw poll go?
So the Telegram poll says the following: how is MX Linux exploration going? 50% said MX Linux is amazing. I can see why they're number one. 15% said MX Linux is okay. 0% said I'm not having a good time with MX Linux. 8% said I'm not interested in trying MX Linux. 8% said I'm unable to do the exploration this week. 15% said I'm not interested in doing the explorations in general. 4% said other, please reply other and give details. Nobody replied to the poll.
So those were pretty good results then. 50% said MX Linux is amazing. That's great. So about MX Linux, I'm going to give you a little bit of a history behind it, and we have a lot of information here. I'm not going to try to read it all verbatim, but just as a general overview, MX Linux is a mid-weight Linux operating system based on Debian stable, using core antiX components with additional software created or packaged by the MX community. It was developed as a cooperative venture between antiX, is it anti-X or antiX, Dolphin? Settle this for me for once and for all.
So is my bad eyesight finding the unmute button. It's antics, as in
I thought so.
crazy stuff, and or
Hijinks.
antiques, if you want to consider it that. A lot of people say anti-X, and anti doesn't really care if you call it anti-X, but it's antics.
I thought so. Okay, so it's a cooperative venture between antiX and the former Mepis communities. And I don't know if anyone remembers Mepis, but that was
Yes,
a
but
great
I thought it was,
distro from back in the day. Yeah,
I thought it was Mepis, but it's Mepis.
it might be Mepis. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
again, that was just sort
It
of.
doesn't matter.
But that was a
no
great
idea.
distro back in the day. I remember using that and really enjoying it. So
Yeah, heck yeah. I think that's like the one that you could get it running on anything. I'm sorry, I just hijacked the conversation. I'll shut up.
No, you're right. You're right. And it was, and that's what made it so great, was that the hardware support was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And it had the live, the first of the live CD too, wasn't it? Was Mepis the first of the live?
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Very early. It was. If I remember correctly, there's a bit of if you examine them real close, early versions of Knoppix would look a lot like Mepis, and I think Knoppix is first, and then Mepis.
You know, Mandrake was like not far after that, but I remember like
everybody got on board with live right after Knoppix figured it out. So
I thought it was so much fun because you could like pop a CD in and you have like a whole, distribution. Oh my gosh, you can run Linux just off of a CD. It was great.
Well, and right at the time, it was running it off of a CD, so it had to seek, the seek time. So it wasn't fast, but it did work, and it was really impressive. That I remember taking a live CD and putting it into a Windows computer and booting it up in front of someone, and them going, it was like mind blowing. Well, how did you do that? Or where's all my files? Like that was the other thing. They were afraid they thought I blew out their hard drive. Anyway, so the MX name came from M for Mepis, and X from antiX, and acknowledgement of their roots. The community's stated goal is to produce a family of operating systems that are designed to combine elegant and efficient desktops with high stability and solid performance. So the main flagship of MX, the desktop, is XFCE, and they have also added a freestanding KDE Plasma version as well as a standalone Fluxbox implementation. Other environments can be added or available as spin-off ISO images. So the history here, this is the long part. I'm probably not going to read all of this. I'll try to get through it pretty quickly, but I just want to demonstrate, how far back this goes. And this has been a labor of love.
You can skip over whatever you want. I
Okay.
just threw it all in there.
That's
Yeah.
fine. It's fine. MX Linux began in a discussion about future options among members of the Mepis community in December 2013. Developers from antiX then joined them, bringing the ISO build system as well as the live USB DVD technology. To be listed on the Linux Distribution Clearinghouse website DistroWatch, MX Linux was initially presented as a version of antiX. It received its own DistroWatch page with the release of the first public beta of MX16 on November 2nd, 2016. Since then, MX has tracked Debian releases from Wheezy to Jessie, Stretch, Buster, and now Bullseye. During that time, they have continued to backport many applications to add the nicety of having more up-to-date applications on a stable base. In 2019, they introduced the ability to add Flexbox Window Manager as an overlay, and in 2020, an ISO with KDE Plasma. I think that's probably a good background. Is there anything? I mean, it goes through each release, and I don't really see the need to go into that kind of granular detail. What we're going to do is, if anyone has any interest in more of this history, because it is a good history, we're going to publish this as part of the video description, so that you can go and read this yourself if you'd like. So the
And
current
also-
release is
And also, like Linux user space, they have a really great background history on it as well. And so that's probably the best detailed, because Leo goes so deep into it, probably knows more than Dolphin does just in that. I
Well,
don't
Leo
know.
definitely knows more than me at this point.
yeah.
but-
If you haven't listened to the Linux user space show on MX, Leo did a fantastic job. Go ahead, Dolphin, sorry.
I'll tell you this is something Leo didn't cover, which because it was more Mepis than MX, but Mepis was originally a commercial distribution. You couldn't buy it in stores, but the original Mepis community, most of those guys were subscribers to Mepis, and that was kind of how it came about. The guy was, I don't know if you remember that everything was shrink wrapped in the stores back then, and he was distributing it online. So it's kind of cool. Cool thought.
Yeah,
So
no, absolutely. So the current release is MX21. It was released on October 21st, 2021. It's based on Debian 11 Bullseye and is available as XFC, KDE, or Flexbox, like I mentioned. And the MX website is well maintained. There's a blog and section that covers all of this. So, I think that just really was intended to demonstrate the longevity of the project, the roots of the project, the fact that it grew out of these other distributions and have sort of culminated into this MX distribution that we see today. And it also shows you how stable it is because it has this long standing base. So I think that's probably all I want to cover, Nate.
Let's see.
Installation.
For the installation process. Now, I've kind of left this a little bit too open-ended in the past, and so I want to try and focus the conversation a little bit more. But were there any installation issues? I'm going to go from that direction because I've never had an installation issue with MX. So yeah, go ahead, Eric.
I haven't had an issue, but I did want to call attention to the fact that unlike almost every other Linux distribution, they have their own installer instead of using Calamares or some other sort of standard installer. MX has their own, and I really appreciate the fact that as you install, it's giving you a text description of what you're doing. So it doesn't assume that, hey, I know what I'm supposed to be doing here. It actually explains to you on the left-hand side the purpose of this screen that you're looking at, what's expected of you in terms of what you're going to have to fill out and that sort of thing. I've always appreciated that, and I think it's a very smart idea that I don't understand why other installers don't do that. But
yeah, I was kind of befuddled because I just didn't get it installed till today, and going through it. Okay, let me hit installation, and I got a dialog box here, and then I'm watching. I'm like, wait, it's installing. It was just so unique. You don't see. You're right. The other type of installers, and it was quick. I thought Peppermint is quick, but this installed very quick.
Yeah.
Did you also notice how before you were even done setting it up, it started installing for you? It gave you like a sanity check about the drives, and then it took off, so you can actually keep working, and it gave you a little progress bar. And if you weren't, and if it was faster than you were, it would wait for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and also you can choose to save any setting changes that you made as part of the installation. So if you were in a live environment using it for a while before you decided to install it, and you changed something, you can have it persist through, and you have the choice. So it's not that it either makes the choice for you, it either does it or doesn't. You actually have the choice there in front of you. So the utility of the installer is pretty amazing, and it, as everyone said so far, it's very quick as well. So, did anyone have any issues installing or anything remarks that they? Go ahead, Dan.
No, the only remark I would have would be that college has a lot of things I liked about the installer, but the only issue I really noticed specifically, aside from the moving on part, I didn't realize you're supposed to move on, so I watched it get to the end. Then I was like, okay, it's pausing. What's it waiting for? No, I hit next, so I hit next, and then it went over and went on. But at any rate, it didn't seem to have any. Maybe I missed it or something, but I didn't see any swap partition options there.
It's the same screen as you pick root. You pick all your partitions on the same screen if you do a custom install.
Oh,
Little
let's
drop
see.
down box has all the things.
Okay. Yeah, I must have missed that part.
Oh, Colin.
Well, Dan was first. Dan can go.
Oh, I'm
first.
sorry.
He had his hand up before me.
Darn it.
The installer is fabulous. I mean, the literature down the left side of it and explaining everything about what everything does is great. I really like the installer. For me, I use the same laptop I used last week for Peppermint, so you know what an old dinosaur it really is. It has no UFI or anything. So I ran the installer and installed it on hardware. And then when I took the live key out, when it told me to at the end, the live USB, I would not boot. And okay, I put the live key back, the live USB back in it, booted from that, and I could go to the advanced menu in the thing. And there was a way to actually boot from that, and then it would boot from the hard drive and get you into the system. And in the system, there's a tool called Boot Repair. I hit that and it fixed everything, and now boots. So that's the only thing I wanted to mention is it's you don't need the terminal to even fix your boot system. It's all push button stuff from the beginning.
I'd just like to say I want to know I don't know where I got this name from, but is the installer name called the Gazelle installer? I'm not sure.
Okay, so yes, if you go looking for the Gazelle the installer's source code, and if you're clever and look in our repo, because we have all the source code in our repo too, you'll find that it's actually Gazelle, and it's actually configurable. So antiX and Mepis, antiX and MX. God, you got me saying Mepis now. I haven't said Mepis for freaking 12 years, and now I'm saying Mepis.
You broke him.
So the Gazelle is starting because it's fast, and it's even faster now than when we named it because due to the efforts of a guy who goes by AK-47 down in Australia. He's another Aussie. He's like brought a lot of coding shops to that thing that made it even faster. He's the guy that made it do the big copy while you're still setting up, and he's kind of the genius behind that. So at any rate, yeah, it's Gazelle. It's a project that's shared by antiX and MX. It's actually configurable. You can strip out a lot of text out of it and put in your own distributions text. I'm just saying we kind of did that with a data package that you can put in. But MX and antiX were kind of separating apart. And one of the things we did when I took over with some of the dev stuff from the original team is like we smashed that back together so it's unified again. And part of that was it's not going to be an MX project, it's not going to be an antiX project. It's the Gazelle installer. Technically, I'm the owner of the Git repo, but whatever, it's open. And that's been a great move because we've had a lot of people contributing to it over the years. AK does the lion's share of the contributing these days, but there's been a number of people over the years, and that's been a good move.
A couple of observations I made. Customized disk layout is set by default, which is interesting. Is that to give people just to make them think about what they're doing when they're installing?
So if it finds partitions that are suitable for use, it'll default to the custom layout. Unlike some other distributions on the planet, we pretty well understand that MX is probably not going to be the sole inhabitant of your hard drive. Um, I can name a few that use system boot, but I'm not going to. Um, uh, so we kind of assume that if you've got a whole mess of partitions on your drive, you probably want a target partition, and so it defaults to that. If you do it in VirtualBox, it'll default to the we call it the regular install. And this time,
okay, I haven't
this
noticed.
time around, we added a slider so that you could have a slider to separate, automatically do home swap and root partitions and on a fresh disk. So
That's one thing I really liked about it.
it's the yeah. Go ahead.
I've got one more question, Dolphin. The early in the piece when you changed the installer where you got the selections for the partitions, it was very clear lines. Now it looks, I don't know what's happened to that. It looks like it's out of focus.
Okay, fine. It's a little bit weird looking, but what it is, it's actually dashed lines.
Yeah.
I forget exactly why that happened, but with a project like ours, if someone does the work, I'm probably going to let it through. And he was doing the work, and that's what it looks like. It was honestly though, with solid lines, it was a little hard to tell what you had selected and what you didn't. Now we're making little tweaks along the way. If you open it, one of the things you can do with our medium is if you can update the installer before you install. We've actually updated the installer, I think 3 times since we released. We're planning another release soon, so that the new releases will have the latest installer. But we haven't necessarily changed those lines, but we have added little drop down arrows to show you where to click to drop things down. And some of the boxes are a little bolder than they used to be when you have them selected. So it kind of gives you an indication where you can click, but that's what it was. When everything was solid lines, it was actually kind of confusing. It was like navigating a spreadsheet.
Yeah. But it's fine. I just noticed that, I think when it first came out early in the piece, I think in the beta, I think it was clear lines. So yeah, you're right. It's obviously
It changed right.
Point.
It changed right before we released. Just we had a lot of people who had no idea where to click, and that was the first thing we tried, was making the lines different so that you could see where to click. The fact that you guys could even install it shows you that we at least got that part right. In the latest version, the things that have drop down, like the things that say root, swap, home, whatever they say, I forget. We added little echelon arrows so that they're not really arrows. It's complicated, but there's little arrows that are drawn in there so that you can see where to click, because that was kind of a user thing. Probably our biggest comment on the installer after we released was, where do I click? And so hopefully we fix that.
So Penguin, what do you have?
Well, the main issue I had is it didn't want to install in Vote Manager. The installer would crash if I did the regular install. I had to partition the drive manually, and that was the only issue I had in Vote Manager. I have no idea why. I've installed MX in Vote Manager before in previous versions, but this one did not want to, and this was the Fluxbox version.
Did you use in user mode or in the like system mode or whatever?
Mine defaults to user.
Okay.
Because I had to set it up that way for my system.
You know, you might want to check, make sure you don't have anything like toggled in your BIOS. Like I when I set up built a new machine, there was I had to make sure that it had the right flags turned on to do virtualization. So I wonder, maybe double check on those.
Oh, I've done. Yeah, those are on.
Okay.
I know that.
I installed it using Virt Manager on OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, and everything went smashingly well. But
yeah, because Vote Manager won't work on my machine unless that's turned on. I learned that the hard way.
Okay.
So, but that's the only issue I had with it.
Did you try and extract some like bugs from it, like see if you could get like a crash report or anything like that?
I should have. I didn't.
Okay.
I should have, but I didn't think of it. I will try to do that and then try and get it reported to GitHub.
Or yeah, just if it's something that maybe a specific piece of an idiosyncrasy with your hardware or something like that maybe could be identified.
Yeah, it could be. Maybe I should just try on my other laptop, see if it crashes on it.
Or you can try it on real hardware. That's another good choice.
Right now, I don't have a computer available for that.
Oh man, I can tell you right now, MX Linux is best experienced on real hardware. There's no substitute.
Yeah, most distributions are pretty much that way.
Well, yeah. Um, but right now, just like the other laptops have something on it that I can't wipe out yet. But Vote Manager Virtual Machines is usually how I test out everything. So
Okay. Anybody else got something special about the installer?
It's not the installer, but I just wanted to say to the MX team that this release being called Wildflower, and then having this like absolutely gorgeous wallpaper pop up, and like it was such a beautiful like presentation to me. I just wanted to compliment you guys on that.
Thank you. Our art director, Asquith, she'll be very happy to hear that. We, after Petito Feo, we were kind of playing around with a different, with different foreign language for us. Most of us are English speakers, not all of us, but most of us are foreign English speakers. And we were playing around with some different things, and we were rolling with some Dutch for a while, and we were with roses and different things. And then someone was like, "Why don't we just do Wildflower and do it in English?" And here's this awesome wallpaper that was contributed to us, because I think all the art on the release this time, I think all the art on the last one too, are all original that have been contributed to us over time. And we normally run not a contest, but we normally run a submission entry when we do develop, when we're putting the at least when we get to closer to the RC ISOs, and those packages get included. We did something fun this time. We on the beta ISOs, we included just one wallpaper. I forget what it was. I don't know if it was Wildflower or something else, but the package for the artwork was already there. So when we finalized the package for the artwork, everybody got an update, which was a lot of fun. And anything that didn't make the package, which were a lot of submissions this time, I think is still hosted on our website, so people can right click and download them. Go support those artists because they're awesome.
Yeah, well, definitely let her know that. I mean, this to me, you start to see this sort of the same things. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a picture of a canyon or a mountain or whatever the normal stuff is, but this just says so bright and colorful and like inviting. So good stuff.
Thank you.
I really thought the installer was amazing, to be honest.
Is that Leo?
Yeah, can you hear me? Is there? We good?
Yeah, you sound great.
The real Leo Shady.
Yeah, we were just talking about Linux user space. You guys went into like some serious detail.
I love doing that. Actually, I thought I would hate it, but then when Joe left the show, it kind of fell on both Dan and I to do that, and I like it way more than I thought. So yeah, we get some detail. We get some detail going on.
I think you might actually know more than Dolphin does on his own distro.
He got deep, man. He got
I'll
deep.
I'll take any of that praise. That's great. But the installer was one of my favorite things about MX, just simply because, well, one, it's not, nobody else uses it that I know of. There may be some like antiX probably, but I don't know anybody else that uses that installer. And have y'all commented how fast it is?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I needed to make sure that got said. But the other thing that I really enjoyed about it was the password complexity game. I feel like that's a game that got installed on there that you have to play to get to fill up the bar.
When you said that on the podcast, I was in my car and I laughed out loud because I noticed it too whenever I installed it. I'm like, no one else has a bar like that.
Yep. So we might as well just publish this as a game, call it Password Simulator or Password Complexity Simulator. And
I actually didn't notice that.
And anybody can put weak or moderate or strong in their text. We have a health bar.
Exactly. I loved it. And one thing that freaked me out, that wasn't broken or anything like that, it just was unexpected, was when you start answering the questions and you get to the point where it's going to install the EFI or the MBR, whatever loader, the bootloader, the installer is already halfway done. And that freaked me out because every other installer asks you what you want to do with the bootloader before that point, before you start getting progress on it getting installed. And I thought it was just a nice touch, but it freaked me out because I was like, oh no, where is it installing? And I just hadn't answered the question yet. So yeah, a nice touch. I swear the last time I installed it, it took less than 5 minutes from launch to done where I could reboot. And It's impressive.
Even on my relatively ancient, I have nice hardware. I build the ISOs on it, the ISOs on it. But my go-to everyday machine is a Lenovo T530, simply because it has a terrific keyboard. It's got the track. I just can't give the thing up. It's got a hard drive. It's got 2 hard drives in it. I just love this thing. It's kind of slow though, from a CPU standpoint. I can still install a full bore MX on this in 8 minutes, which is pretty darn fast. And honestly, that AK, when he started changing the code so that it would do that skip thing, that was one thing he said, was like, seriously, this file copy takes 8 minutes. Can't we do something else with this thing? And there it is. And now you know why it's Gazelle.
Beautiful.
I think Bill posted something in the work group he'd like to have mentioned. A couple of things to mention: that the installer sets the swap file to be the same as system RAM, and hibernation works out of the box. Might want to mention the nice tour app in the welcome show. Sounds good from the grill. Oh, and he's grilling a tri-tip steak. I think he's put down there for those that are hungry.
Did he bring enough for the whole class?
No,
Yeah.
of course he didn't.
That does not help.
It does not surprise me either.
Right. Any final on the installer?
I was gonna mention that I like how it lets you open gparted if you want to work with the partitions. Most installers have trouble like working with partitions. Like you can just get gparted that way. When I booted MX, I got an error, but it wasn't like a critical error, I guess. It said something about ZSTD, and then there was like red letters, and then but it still booted up when I booted up the USB. I'm not sure what that was about, so I just mentioned it.
Was that was like during like your initial boot?
Yeah, you know how you can click to see if everything's loading
Yeah.
correctly, the letters. It just flew by real quick.
ZSTD is a compression type. It might just be like the image unpacking or something, or the kernel unpacking. I remember recently there was some kind of thing with the kernel.
Our Linux, our squash.fs file is compressed ZSTD,
Oh,
so
okay.
that's possible.
Okay, well, if there's no other things on the installer, we can maybe move on to some of the apps that are in MX. Now, as I mentioned, I really didn't get a chance. I installed it a few years back. I think 20 and that. So who I mean, are they outside of the great set of tools that the custom tools that MX has? Anybody comment on some of the good ones?
I think from my standpoint, we've been hitting this each week with different distributions, but the idea that you have sort of a sane base set of packages that everyone's going to assume there's a web browser, a file manager, a text editor, just basic stuff like that. So the set of packages that are there by default, especially on the KDE version at least, are exactly what I would expect. And then I have been playing around with, but I'm doing it now again on a test version using the MX installer and going through and just checking out different things through that installer. I really love custom installers like this, where you're not necessarily going through the package manager or through a store. It's more of a purpose-built, focused. Here's the popular things that most people are going to want on this first screen and categorized, and then you can go to get file packs, and you can go do backports and all that different stuff. And I guess the thing that popped into my mind when I'm looking at MX, and this always happens, is as a former IT guy, this to me looks like somebody who has answered all of the questions that have been posed to them. Like, well, how can I set up the boot menu so that there's this tool that we wrote for you, and how do I here's this tool that we wrote for you, and well, what about and we have that there too. And it's exactly what it reminds me of. It's just like someone has asked enough questions over the years of how do I do this, that the developers have said, okay, well, here you go. Here's a tool to do it.
So now you've just uncovered our top secret development process for MX tools. Whenever we get enough questions about a task in the forum, one of us tends to start writing one. And if it's me, someone usually takes it over and writes it better because I'm kind of a hack. But most of the tools that people gush about, which is the package installer and boot options and a couple of the others, our guy Adrian has done. So if Adrian's watching, shout out to Adrian. He's chilling in Metro DC area someplace.
Cool.
But I probably outed him, so now he's going to hide again. So he's done those. Tweak is mine. I mostly take care of Tweak. But yeah, that stuff's all kind of fun.
Gee, Colin, you got something to say about apps?
Yeah, mate. Yes.
Colin?
I was going to say. I was making some videos about MX when it first came out, but one thing I didn't realize was with the package installer, I didn't realize that you had, now this may have changed since then, but you had LibreOffice, the latest version, in the package installer that comes from, what's the repo it comes from? The backports, isn't it?
Yeah, so it pulls from backports. Now, so LibreOffice is kind of one of the things that we go back and forth on the dev team. We're a good sized team for the kind of project we are. We're a big team for the size project we are, but we're not, a corporation here. Okay, we don't have a whole lot of back end. We're not. It takes a lot to maintain our repositories, and I didn't particularly want to commit to updating LibreOffice all the time. Which if you host a different version than what Debian's got, you gotta commit to maintaining the stupid thing. We do that with Firefox. We don't do it with LibreOffice. So one of our other developers, Felix, came up with this system where we have these helper packages pre-installed, and the package installer knows which LibreOffice you have based on that helper package, and it will try to flip it to the Debian backports version, which is usually pretty close to whatever LibreOffice is shooting out. So that's how that works. And you, because of that magic, it can actually flip back if you decide you don't want it and you just want to stick with Debian security features. Because we're split. Like I split with whatever Debian stable provides. Jerry, our project manager, likes the latest, and so we go back.
Right.
This is like the panel flip, okay? We're just satisfying everybody.
It works awesome too, because I tried it, and because I think last time I had to click on the backports tab, but then I seen it in the package install. I thought, geez, that's interesting. I don't remember seeing that, but I don't remember everything that I look at. But yeah, that was cool.
The popular apps tab has all sorts of weird superpowers associated to it. Because everything's on a package per package basis. Adrian, there was an old app, I think Leo mentioned it in one of during his history, the meta package installer. Now we kind of inherited that original thing. I want to say it was Cidix or one of the Debian SID ones that antiX inherited it. We originally had it in MX14. We rewrote the thing, and you can actually make, if you knew what you're doing, you can actually make your own files. They're individual files. You don't have to recompile anything. It's just a text file. It's an XML file. That's what it is. Sorta. It's kind of a bastardized XML file. But so each app gets its own file. All that's processed. And we can actually run post-install scripts, post-removal scripts, set things up before you ever install. We can download from websites like Google Chrome. We set up the Google Chrome repo and install Google Chrome from the package installer, from their own repo, because they have one. But Zoom doesn't have a repo. So it downloads the deb, installs the deb. Now it's in the package system, so you can remove it if you want to from Synaptic or package installer or whatever. And if you ever want to update the thing, you just run it again and click reinstall. So it's got some weird stuff that goes on with it. And it can do meta packages instead of just single packages. So like if you install the GNU image program, it also installs a bunch of plugins. So it's without having a meta package associated with it. So it's got all kinds of weird superpowers that the run-of-the-mill package manager doesn't have.
Nice. What do you have, Penguin?
He's not sure. I was going to say to Eric, I think the application you were probably most excited about because of the trackball that you have, you probably liked playing L Breakout 2 because that is a perfect trackball game. And so I think that's
I'll
probably...
I'll have to give that a try.
Okay.
So are you getting to a desktop category?
We're doing the default applications and anything you may have installed at this point.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I had someone off screen talking to me for a second. But I often call MX Linux not just a Linux distribution; it's a total Linux experience with the tools and the applications that they create for Debian. This is the kind of distribution I always recommend to new users if they want Debian stable, because of all the easy to use applications to get everything set up with. That's one thing that MX Linux does best, and I like it that that the package installer goes and pulls some things from Debian backports. However, I'm kind of dangerous on my Debian stable. I'll just go and pull it from the SID repos, but I don't do that. I'm a bad guy doing that. But
All right. What do you got, Rick?
Well, I was wondering, can I go back and talk about the installation just one more time?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay, I didn't want to screw up your system here, but basically one of the things I forgot to mention was that the AHS versions of it can run up-to-date processors and stuff like that. I thought that was really cool. It means I can run it on this machine, which won't install Debian 11 on it.
Hmm.
Because
That's awesome.
5.10 kernel doesn't work, but you get a 5.14 kernel with AHS.
That's awesome.
So that's pretty cool, I thought.
Thank you. That thing's a labor of love for a number of us, and we're getting ready to update it again with a 5.16. So,
Wow,
yeah.
sounds good.
Before we lose that train of thought, I do have a question for you. Doing the updated kernel, that really sets you apart from the other Debian-based distributions. That really makes you more on the leading edge as far as like a Debian distribution. I mean, is that not true? Is there anything else that's more?
Well, the Oz stack has Mesa, Xorg, NVIDIA now, and Vulkan drivers that are more up to date than what's in Debian stable. Most of that we backport from SID. The NVIDIA drivers typically get backported back from experimental, which is scary, but whatever, it's not that scary. So we're actually making a big hop this week. We went from 570 to 510 on the NVIDIA drivers. Now there's a little bit of a what do you call it, a trade-off with Oz, okay? Because it updates, we don't update any other packages except things that we need to work with the kernel. Like VirtualBox got updated because the one we had hosted before wouldn't compile with on anything other than the 510. I completely lost my train of thought. It's boarding at the station.
You talking about
there's a little bit of trade-off because it's supposed to be on the edge. And I run an older machine. We have a repository that hits for Oz for devs before it hits Oz. Okay, so we call it Oz staging. And so I just got a whole mess of updates tonight about 5 minutes before this went live. So I'm running with those right now. I have an old machine. I probably shouldn't be doing it, but I like to make sure there's no conflicts before things go out in the wild. So there's a number of us that do this. It's the only repo we do this with. It's separate. But one of the things we found out this last time is when we updated the NVIDIA drivers, they dropped support for Kepler video cards in 510, actually in 495, but we didn't get it till 510. So if you were running Oz on a Kepler video card, you're able to use the old 470 drivers. If you're not, it actually tries to back you off to the legacy 390 drivers because the 510 doesn't support it anymore. So if you're running on a Kepler card, you probably ought to turn off Oz. It's not for you anymore. There's actually very little in there for NVIDIA users except the kernel and the drivers. But that's on the edge. I think only one person reported that, but it happens. NVIDIA drops support for something. What are you gonna do? So you think time marches on. But so Oz is a little further down the line from Debian stable, and yeah, we did that on purpose because half the dev team has hardware that Debian stable You need newer stuff to operate with, particularly AMD video cards. What the heck? The only way to get new AMD drivers is to update the kernel.
Right.
Well, I ain't waiting 4 years to update the kernel. Debian stable. So there you go. Bob's your uncle.
Thank
All
you.
right, Peter.
The MX package installer is awesome. I'm involved in a few distros, and most of them, especially Flatpak. Let me focus on Flatpak. Most of the distros I use, you have to manually install Flatpak. You have to manually install the repo, and then usually manually run a command to install the Flatpak package itself or the programs. MX just does it. It's great. You pick the program you want, and it just installs a repo, it does everything for you. Done. I love it. Thank you.
You're welcome. That the Flatpak support was actually added. Adrian added it with our art director Asquith basically standing behind him with a ball bat until he added it to the system, because she wanted that in there, and
Yeah,
I think it works pretty well actually.
it does.
She was
works really
right.
great.
Yeah.
I don't mind if more people don't add that in automatically. It's a simple
It actually
thing.
is set up when you first start the thing. It's not set up. The first
Yeah.
thing the installer does though is set it up and then download all the packages.
Right.
It's one command, dude. It's like
Yeah, no, it's simple. I don't know why more people don't do that.
that's what we said.
What do you got, Leo?
So we've been talking about Flatpaks, and I loved that. That's how I got my Discord, and there's a lot of other packages that I pulled from that, and I can't believe. I mean, just pretty much what Peter was talking about. I can't believe how easy it was. You click on the tab, and then you just click all the apps you want. Easy. But what really got my goat was that MX packages some of my favorite apps themselves: Warpinator, Web App Manager, and Hypnotics. Now, Hypnotics is probably the least used of those, but I can't live without Web App Manager. It's why I can't stray too far from Linux Mint, because there are a lot of websites that I use that I'd like for them to be nice and isolated away from an entire browser, and Web App Manager does that, and MX packages that. So that makes me a happy camper. And BPyTop. That is the other thing that I like to. I put it on its own workspace so I can go peek at it from time to time, and it's there. I did not have to leave MX Linux to go searching for a deb of this or anything. So I was very happy with what it came provided, or what came provided with it. You really just don't have to look outside of that very much.
Well, that'll make the package team very happy. We're all nerds at MX Linux, so we want the blingy stuff. So we if someone mentions it, we'll try to package it. Sometimes we can't. The older you get into the Debian stable life cycle, the trickier that gets. And at some point you have to stop packaging things for the previous Debian to say we're done. Because it requires updating glibc or the Qt libraries or something like that, which is this is the biggest reason. Like, we don't have the latest Plasma, right? Someone's going to say that tonight. You don't have the latest Plasma, and we don't, and we're not gonna, because you have to update the entire Qt toolchain and Debian to do it. And there's a lot of crap in Debian's repos that will break if we do that, and we're not going to break it. So you're just going to have to wait for later Plasmas. However, the Plasma guy for Debian, Norbert, I forget his last name, he hangs out in the MX repos all the time, and there's a bunch of guys running like Plasma on an unofficial kind of weird experimental update ISO thing, and they're having a good time with it. And you know what? There's a section of the repo for modified MX. Go to town. I don't care. You want to nerd out? We're in the right place.
I don't think there's anything so egregious about having an older version of Plasma. Honestly, it's not like it's unstable or anything. It's just slightly older.
This version, I'll agree with you. The 520's not bad. The one we had on the Buster base was terrible.
No.
It had the older Discover that everybody hated. Things crashed like randomly all the time. I don't know what was the problem with 5.15. I don't know. I don't want to know. We're on 520 now. This one's a lot better. So
520 was a nice sweet spot too, because that's when that allowed me to do the 125% scaling on a small, tiny 1080p screen, and that worked flawlessly. So that was the right choice for Plasma.
We have quite a few people running the Plasma KDE edition now, and it's going pretty well. A lot of people don't realize, even though it's shipped with the 5.10 kernel, it's actually running the Oz repo underneath it. So it's got the updated graphics stack, because never mind the fact that Plasma isn't that bad from a memory standpoint point of view, it does beat on the graphics system just a little bit. So we like to update those drivers so that you get a better Plasma experience.
Vince,
Makes sense.
you're quietly waiting there. What you got, buddy?
Just at risk of sounding repetitive, going back to the software installer, I absolutely love it myself as well. Just out of habit, when I first installed MX, I went and grabbed the flat packs for Discord and Telegram, because that's just what I normally do. And after hearing some of the discussion, I just went and quickly had a check, and because Discord just had a new release this week as well. So I just checked. It's the latest Discord if you install it from the MX installer, and the latest Telegram too, I believe. So I can see Leo's reaction. I know, right? I know. And the other little thing that I noticed was I really appreciate the addition. Just on a whim, I did a search and I found Vivaldi browser. It was there. And I heard Dolphin talk about how, it's not in the Debian repos. They had to write a script to actually pull in the repo. I didn't even know Vivaldi had a repo, and just install it through the Deb package that they provide. So that's fantastic. I love it. It's fantastic.
Penguin.
Just my comment about all the package versions in MX Linux and stuff. And a lot of people, when a lot of new people come up to me and say, you don't have the latest packages and this stuff. And you just got to remember, with Debian Linux, you can't just go chasing the shiny new thing all the time, because they keep the package base that they have for a purpose. And a lot of people forget that. But I like the way that MX Linux does go through and update some of the stuff like the graphics driver and the kernel, because unless you update the kernel, it's really hard to update that AMD driver. And that's what a lot of people have a big issue with on Linux, on Debian, because when they go and start games up, then the games crash, and especially with Vulkan and all that stuff if you're doing Proton. So good job on updating that kernel, because games work right out of the box with it.
Yeah, so with AMD's open source drivers, that's the only way to update it, is to update the kernel. There's no DKMS packages. I mean, maybe some Uber nerd somewhere can do it, but I can't do it. I need something that comes in and does the thing. I do have an AMD machine here. It's a little bit older. It's mostly Radeon, but yeah, you got to have that. So before we released, we delayed. I don't know if anybody noticed with the release schedule. There's a little bit of a delay between the standard ISOs and the AHS ISO. Most of that was because we were waiting on a kernel to get stable enough to actually run it, because we already before we were in beta, we had users are like, we can't run this on our system. Like, seriously, we went from 4.19 to 5.10. You still can't do it? Nope, because AMD did this and Intel did this, and they don't work anymore because you got a whole new generation. Okay, well, Oz is coming out sooner than planned.
Well, yes, there is a way to update the DKMS package for Ubuntu, because that's the way Ubuntu gets the latest AMD drivers on their kernels. Is they have a separate repo, and it does do a DKMS package for it. So someone has figured out how to do it. Except if you do it in Debian, you will break it, because I have tried it and it broke.
Yeah, Ubuntu is not Debian. Debian might be Ubuntu might be Debian, but Debian is not Ubuntu. It doesn't. It typically, a lot of things don't work going the other way.
No, it does not. And if you, like I said, I pulled packages down from the SID repositories, but that's a very, very dangerous thing to do. But I generally do that just to pull down the latest browsers, just because I want the latest browsers. And generally you can do that, but if you try to do anything else, you will break it.
So the format USB, since I haven't really looked at, what is that, just a typical USB formatter, or
Yeah, it's a nice thing that they include by default because there's some distributions that don't include things like that. And so obviously I'm guessing, somebody probably says, well, how do I format a USB drive? And then MX now includes that because if you don't, you run into a distribution and you don't know how to, you look, you're not going to find a lot of them don't have that installed by default. So I think that's a very important thing to have in there because I'm not going to complain about any distributions, but OpenSUSE doesn't install it by default, and that irritates me. So I think that's something that should be there.
So I agree with you. That one's mine. Format USB is one of mine because I got really tired of people wanting a GUI to format their stuff. And like the only thing we had on the system that was there by default was Gparted. I'm like, that's a little bit of overkill for formatting a USB stick.
So you don't need a howitzer to do the job of a rifle, basically.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. So
shouldn't the format USB be categorized with the live USB maker?
Okay,
so end of the box.
So it's not just for live USBs; it's for your data USBs. In fact, it's not for live; it's for your data USBs. It actually super secretly, if you check a box, you can format any partition on your system if you really want to. You're only going to get the choices it has. It doesn't have every choice. You're not going to format DTRFS or any of the cool ones. You're going to get things that were suitable for USB. But ext4 is on there, NTFS is on there. And it used to be, it's funny you said that, Dan, it used to be it used to use the live USB maker back end from antiX to do the formatting. There's a function in that tool to do it. But as of MX21, we rewrote it so that it stands alone because we needed more options, and it was easier to add them to format USB than it was to add them to live USB maker.
Okay.
Now, as far as your general user experience panel, what would you say, like your overall, what would you say about it? Like, for me, I really enjoy how when MX boots up, the way it populates the taskbar or the panel, what do you call it? The panel on the side.
Panel.
I like how it just kind of it fills up, and I don't know if it's a purposeful effect that they do in that, but I like the effect, how like everything just kind of the way it's like turning on a very intricate machine effect. I don't know, I like it. It's just maybe it's a little thing for me. Also, the upgrade applet is perfect. I love it. I love how you have the it's nerdy. It tells me all the stuff that's doing on the underpinnings, but it also gives me nice little buttons to push on the bottom. I think that's just absolutely perfect, and I'm glad you do it like that. So anyone who says otherwise is wrong.
For that particular tool, the updater tool, started with Mepis, and a guy named Kay Mathern from our forum. He's not in the forums right now. He had some family stuff and took off back when COVID started, and I hope he's doing okay. But that's kind of been taken over by another guy, one of our European members, Felix or Felix. I don't know how to say his name. Felix, we'll call him. And you write this stuff. I don't know. I don't hear him. He speaks German. I don't know.
No, I know.
So he's kind of taking it over. And yeah, people say, well, I need to update from the terminal. Hey, guess what? Our updater tool updates from the terminal. Just go down.
So, I mean, my general usage of the desktop was great, and it always is, simply because, like I mentioned, if there's something I need to do, fix, change, install, whatever, I mean, it supports all the software I could possibly want out of the box. It gives me all the tools I could possibly want to be able to adjust my system and manage it. It gives me a reasonably modern version of KDE Plasma. I mean, I'm not really missing anything. I mean, it's stable because it's built on a stable base, and there's really it's one of those things. It's just like a steadfast, you can set your watch to it sort of thing. It's just it's there, it works, and yeah, I mean and also, just as I've said this before, I love the fact that you can make your own ISO, and so basically what I'll do. And because of all these tools, right, it makes it a great recovery system. So I will set up a Plasma install with some extra packages that I like, and then I will make an ISO and then have that ISO be on my thumb drive, and like with Ventoy, and I can just boot to it and fix fix my boot or do whatever sort of recovery task I need to do on a system, and it's brilliant. It's so easy, it's accessible. You can do these things on any version of Linux, any distribution, but it's so accessible.
Puts it in the forefront for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's all because of the antiX Live system that this stuff kind of works, and there's a little bit of an ecosystem involved with it. Someone mentioned earlier, why doesn't anybody else use the installer? You actually can. Other people could use the installer. We can't use some of the other installers because the way the Live system works. So we were at one point we were looking at writing a new module for Calamares to work with the Live system, and it became easier just to update the Mepis one and turn it into Gazelle, and it kind of went from there. But I mean, I've built spins of Ubuntu with the antiX Live system on it. It's a little ugly to do it, and I've never made them public, but it technically can work. I'm not going to say it's easy to do because there are differences between Ubuntu and Debian. But that Live system, so you've heard of AV Linux. It's the guy that does AV Linux, really great guy. He took our snapshot system. That's what he built his last version of AV Linux on. And this last time, we actually helped him. We made some there's some template files you got to have to make the snapshot thing work. And we actually made him some special template files to help him with that. So this last time, he's actually used our build system, the antiX and MX share build system. And he's actually used the build system to build AV Linux. So it's built from scratch now. And he's just released the thing last week, and it looks pretty cool to me. I haven't actually run it, but he's a great guy. I'm sure it's fine, and it's mostly MX under the hood with his own stuff on top of it. That's what you can do with this snapshot Live stuff. We've got a couple of examples. We do the monthly snapshots, update the ISOs for a couple of them. That's done with the snapshot utility. And then Adrian, who's takes care of it mostly. He's got a workbench spin that we host on our SourceForge page. That's just tools. It's not even meant to be installed. I don't even think the installer's on the ISO. It's just a live thing to let you do all your fixie stuff that you're talking about, Eric. And then I've got a couple of weird ones that I make just to give people an example that I host on my own page. I don't host them on MX's because they're off the wall. If they break, I don't want to have MX be at fault for it because a couple of them are kind of experimental.
Yeah, I just don't. If people haven't dug into the tools, I mean, you may not even realize you can do that. It's so powerful and so easy that it's fun. I mean, you come out customize. I mean, it's like you're basically publishing your own version of a Linux distribution, which is.
I mean, people are like, why don't you have a bare one? Or I don't like this application set. Or why do you have so much stuff on the ISO? Dude, seriously, run the USB, take off whatever you don't want, put on whatever you do. Either make an ISO or keep the stick handy. Either way, I keep a stick handy because it's, honestly, I don't need to burn it. I just keep a stick in the drawer.
Right.
But I got like 12 of them because they're also my clean build environments. If I need to build a 32, I take out the 32-bit stick. If I need to build a 64, I take out the 64-bit stick. And I do that for like 3 generations now of MX. So it's gets to be a lot of USB sticks. But that's how I do it. I did this to my advantage to do it that way. I don't need all these partitions. I don't need VirtualBox. I don't need to actually understand Debian's pbuilder system very much. I just do my thing. It's amazingly powerful, and all that comes from most of that live system stuff is really the brainchild of a guy that goes by the name of BitJam in the various forums. The guy's a genius. Hi, BitJam, and primarily on the antiX side, but there's a lot of cross-pollination, as we've talked about. They get a lot of our antiX gets a lot of our apps back ported over to the antiX system, and we get a lot of the live system stuff to us, and it just works out nice that way. But it puts all that power in the user's hand, which is what we want to have. We're unabashedly Linux. People have probably heard me say that on the internet before. We're not trying to be anything else, and we're a geeky system. It's relatively friendly, and Snapshot's one of the things that just lets you go totally bonkers.
So we've all talked about the good experiences we've had and the, brought up a few little points, but did anyone actually have like a bad time? Did anyone have like an impassable barrier?
I
Or
had nothing but a great experience. I've been having a ball with it. I just got a few questions, that's all.
Checks in the mail.
Eris, didn't you have some problems?
Yeah. Once I installed it and rebooted, once it started booting up again, it said it couldn't. Oh no, when it was trying to reboot, it said something about not I'm unable to populate /dev or something like that. And I don't know why that was. I did have a Btrfs partition. I don't know if I need to do anything to set that up. And then I tried installing the systemd system v init so I can get systemd by default, and it wouldn't boot afterwards for me. It got stuck there. It lasted like 3 minutes or 4 minutes or something like that.
So you tried to install systemd?
Yeah, there's
Oh,
like
I
a
thought
system.
There's a
in the
tool
boot
for that.
folder.
It's in
Yeah.
boot repair, I think, or boot something.
It's in the options. You just select the boot option thing and you can set it to be at the default. You don't have to remove the shim. You can. It should have worked fine. I don't know what the problem is from this obviously limited exchange, but it sounds like something is a little weird with maybe kernel boot parameters or something for your particular system. I don't know. But you should have been able to install systemd sysv. All it should have removed is the shim from there. That's weird. Okay.
Yeah. When it was starting to boot after I did the systemd install thing, it didn't say anything. It just said that it was a clean partition or whatever, and it didn't say anything afterwards. But I wish I could give you more, but that's all I know.
Yeah, I'm sorry you had a weird experience, but I can't tell you. I've actually done that particular operation quite a bit, and because I go out of my way to try to make sure most of our stuff works actually everything works under systemd now.
There's a boot options tool, and you just pull down what you want from the drop box and let it rip.
Because I wanted to go systemd default, just because I run some snaps, and that way I could just guarantee that.
Totally understand.
I know what Dan's saying. You can just go in the grub, but I just wanted default for that reason.
I think there's a checkbox you got to check to keep it locked in.
There's a menu. That's what I use the menu because I have to keep everything on for dev stuff. But I actually default to systemd boot just because.
Yeah, it
but
says
if you leave systemd on and if you leave sysv init on and ever do a snapshot, the live system works slightly better with. Well, actually, the live system works a lot better with sysv init than it does with systemd. Just fair warning. There's a reason we didn't take sysv init off. Okay. It's not all philosophical. Part of it is it works better with the live system, and we wanted the live system.
I did have the question of why systemd, why it hasn't MX transitioned to, let's say, run it or one of the other alternatives instead of sysv.
Because Debian, despite the fact that Debian says they're in their last set of votes, says that they're a little bit init agnostic, they're actually not. They're systemd distro, and there are things in there that if I want to mirror the entire Debian archive, I can go with run it. It's fine. I'll do something else, but I don't want to. I'll stick with sysv init. It's still reasonably supported under most packages on Debian. You know what's not? Network Manager. You want to know how big of a hassle they made Network Manager? And I'm looking at you, Debian, because you know you did it. When you update from Buster to Bullseye, not only does it not include an init script for sysv init, it deletes it if you have one. Now, what the heck? You didn't have to do that. So I have a package that puts the freaking init script back. That is the only thing they did out of that whole init diversity BS that went on. They broke Network Manager and on anything but a systemd system. And I'm just a little bit pissed about it because it didn't have to be done. That file sits in Etsy. It shouldn't have been removed without the user intervention, and it's actually deleted. And they know they did it. It's in the comments, and that's the only thing that Debian's done in 20 years that have pissed me off. And that's the one. I don't care if they're a systemd distro, but you don't have to break stuff. So anyway, I'm off my Paul, but sorry about that. I use systemd, okay, because I don't like having to fool around. If I'm installing stuff, I don't want to mess with it. But with trying to figure out if a NIT's going to work or not. But some people don't. I mean, there's a lot we build for our community, right? I mean, the Mepis community is older than MX. The MX community is older than MX itself. And when you build for your people, there's a strong following that want to stick with SysB and NIT, including about half the dev team. So we do that. No problem.
Makes sense.
We had to buy our way into System D shim, but it worked out okay. We had a very nice guy take care of that for us. And despite being made fun of by the complete lack of funds we could throw at it because we didn't have any money, the guy did it for us, and he did it for us twice. He did it for us for Bullseye, for the Bullseye release. Anyway, that's why we don't move around with something else. Now, antiX got a run it spin. You want to play with run it? They got a very nice run it thing. And by the way, the Gazelle installer will work with run it. So I'm just saying, we do try to cover some bases here.
Thank you for the insight.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah, Eris, I was able to do that shim in my virtual machine just fine. So I don't know exactly, but Dolphin is right. If you try and swap out init systems on Debian, it does tend to break Network Manager, and I don't know why, because Network Manager doesn't require a system D at all. So I don't even understand that.
It's actually not true. It does, but only for some very esoteric functions that no home user uses. Just saying.
Oh, I didn't realize that, but
I got down deep into the init diversity people. I know it does something.
Yeah,
but it's nothing I've run across.
But like I've run Network Manager and stuff on Void, and Void Linux is run it. So I mean, it does work.
Oh, you totally can. Yeah, I mean, obviously we use SysB in it. It works fine.
Yeah.
But you can run it on antiX if you want to. But you're right. Debians, they're not going to. It's System D, and that's why Dev1 exists. And have fun, people.
That's and Dev1 actually broke some stuff doing that. So.
I
you know what I'm talking about there.
I've had occasion to talk to some of those guys, and there's a couple of little tidbits of our stuff that they leak over there, and there's a couple of little tidbits of their stuff that leak over here. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of crosstalk.
Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff that
I just wanted to clarify. I did everything on hardware. I didn't use VirtualBox. Just to clarify things.
I figured it was hardware errors because it would have worked in VirtualBox.
Yeah, my guess is probably, and this is just my Debian knowledge. You were using Grub as your bootloader, right? Yes.
Everything default. All I did was
so you
install that package.
So you were using Grub. Did you go and update your Grub config file when you did that? When you did the shim?
Maybe that's why it didn't work.
Yeah, because whenever you do that shim, sometimes it doesn't update that config file, and you should go and reinstall Grub when you do that shim.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Vince.
Okay, so that makes what I'm about to say a little trivial, but I have a couple of little bits of feedback. I put the Plasma version on my laptop, and I've just got a couple of things that I was expecting but didn't quite find out of the box. And that was that the touchpad, to get the right click to work, it was set by default to a 3-finger tap, whereas I think in most places you'd expect a 2-finger tap. So, but that wasn't a hard thing to change. And another thing was that the power management was a bit funny too, because normally what I would expect would be if I was to close my lid of the laptop, it would sleep, but all it did, I think, was turn off the screen. Now, I'm happy if there are reasons for these things, but I just don't know what they are. If someone explains it to me, that's great. But I think I might just put a little post in the forums because I hear they're a friendly place to suggest these sorts of things.
They're not bad.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly on the lid thing. A lot of times, so one of the things you kind of sort of lose when you go SysB init for your defaults is that some of the power management stuff actually works through Systemd a bit better than it does under the more loose init system of SysB init. And we found early on, part of that is it goes back to MX14, when suspend and things like that were hard back in the day, right? So we set the we set the we set the lid switch not to do anything so that we wouldn't crash the computers, because it's worse to lose data, right? It's worse to lose data than it is to not go to sleep. Maybe we can change that now. Honestly, we haven't changed that setting in like 8 years, so it's probable we could change that now to do something else by default. But
for what it's worth, it did work when I changed it.
Cool. Jinda.
Yeah, I didn't ask some questions or point some things out, but I ran the Raspberry Pi version of it, and it's like the best one you can get other than the Raspberry Pi, probably the one right from the factory. It's the only one that ever paid attention to the fact that the Raspberry Pi put tools in it, and you need tools to be able to adjust how much memory you have for your video card, and et cetera, and et cetera, et cetera. And for some strange reason, every other Linux distro that runs something for the Raspberry Pi, just like it completely ignores half the stuff in it, makes it difficult to be able to find, you know, the Raspberry Pi config settings and all these things. But MX Linux was the only one that I've ever used was smart enough to do it. Thank you so much for making such a nice alternative operating system. For
so yeah, I really appreciate that. And Jerry is the Jerry 3904 in our forums. Jerry's kind of the head schmuck when it comes to the Pi spin, and he'd be really happy to hear you had a good experience with it. I run it on my Pi. It's great. When we compile, I'm so lousy with compiling packages. When I got to compile stuff for ARM, I do it on the Pi. It takes forever, but it works. Unlike MX, which is Debian, the Pi spin's still Raspbian for the most part. But yeah, you got a Pi. You want the geo pin things, you want the stuff, you want the weird bootloader, and you want all that weird proprietary junk that they got from Broadcom. You want all that stuff to work, and that's why it does. And he actually talked to the Raspbian guys about that before we based it on there to make sure they were kosher with us doing that, and they've been pretty good about it. So it was nice.
You're muted, Nate.
Yeah, Nate, you're muted.
I was doing that on purpose. I was see if you were paying attention to me rambling into the nothingness. So I want to go into the what's the reason, like the elevator pitch. If you are, maybe sharing a taxi cab with somebody and they ask you out of the blue why they should try MX Linux, what would be your elevator pitch to why you should give it a spin? I don't know, Eric, if you have something you want to fire there.
I mean, I think the stability and the ease of use are probably the biggest things that pop into my mind. If I'm thinking of who would benefit from something like this, I mean, I just think it would be great for someone who just needs a computer that has everything, all the bases covered for them, and doesn't want to really dig down into settings and different things. I think it's actually a fairly good beginner distro from that perspective, because that tool set does allow both for getting the software that they would want, but also then administering the system and being able to change settings and set up printers and just do all the goofy stuff that a normal person would want to do with a computer. They have releases for 32-bit, for ARM, so it's pretty universal that you can run it pretty much everywhere. And yeah, I mean, that's probably what just pops in my mind first and foremost. And then you have the community behind it, the longevity, the responsive developers that actually listen to their feedback and stuff like that. So yeah, that would be my pitch.
It's cool. Yeah, I agree. I think the community is great. I think I have to say the responsiveness of how they do things is really fascinating to me. But I don't want to keep rambling. Leo, you're sharing a cab with somebody. It's a short trip, couple blocks. What would you say?
Well, first off, I feel like I had already gotten out of the cab by the time that was all said and done. No, really though. I mean, seriously, short and sweet. MX Linux is Debian ++, in the same way that Linux Mint is Ubuntu ++. That's really it. That's the end. It's got all the niceties that you need out of a particular base that you want, and MX is that. So yeah, don't fiddle with it. Just use MX instead.
Yeah, I like that. Vince.
Oh, I was just going to highlight what Anna Rita said, because I think she summed it up the best.
Okay.
In that my wife called the MX Linux an extreme purse, LOL. because of everything that it includes.
Yeah, that makes
Love it.
sense. Penguin.
This would be our short, simple. It works right out of the box. You don't have to fiddle with it. It's easy to fix if you do break something. All you have to do is keep a USB stick, and it works with your games right out of the box, pretty much.
Good. So for play. Norbert.
Yeah, well, Leo stole most of my line, more part of my line. But what I wanted to say is um, the comparison that MX is to Debian, what Mint is to Ubuntu. But I would say it's more akin to what Pop! OS is to Ubuntu, because the way Pop! OS works and the team behind it, their philosophy is a lot closer to Ubuntu. Because on one hand, a lot of people have a couple of complaints about Ubuntu, which Pop! OS is trying to iron out. But the thing about MX Linux is while Pop! OS is trying to build on the Ubuntu philosophy, I feel like MX Linux is trying to build on the Debian philosophy, because Debian is a much more conservative, traditional operating system. And the way I look at the most of the MX tools that they build for this, so from the package manager to the partitioner tools, somehow feels right with Debian. It also has that I've only tried their XFC edition, but even when I install Debian, I always go with XFC, because even though it brings up GNOME as a default selection, somehow in my mind XFC is the best, seems to be the best fit. So in my head, it's the desktop for Debian, and I really appreciate how that they chose it. I mean, I'm impartial to the XFC because I run it on the desktop, and MX was my first distro that I ran on my desktop. Previously, I ran Linux on my laptop. So, but if I had to sell MX to someone who has never used Linux before, but maybe have heard about how Debian is where everything is at, because Debian is the grandfather of distros, I would point them to MX because of things like, at one point I was trying to, a few weeks or months before the Debian 11 came out, I was trying to help someone to install Debian 10 on their system, and they couldn't do it because their CPU was just too new for the kernel that the Debian master had. So I suggested them to use to install Debian 11, which was testing. But now I would just tell them to try it, because they have the advanced hardware support version with the newer kernel. And for me, other than the tools, one of the key selling points of MX, even though it's free, is the fact that they maintain a lot of packages that otherwise wouldn't be in the Debian repos or would just be outdated. So it is indeed Debian++. And if someone was interested to get into specifically the Debian family of distros, but
This is a long cab ride. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's not an elevator pitch. I want to get to the other side of town. Yeah.
Well,
so
excellent. Your audio is a little rough. So
maybe it didn't pick up my microphone.
It could be. It's picking something up. Oh, that's much better.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Well, excellent.
I forgot to check my microphone.
No worries. So, Eris, what's your elevator, or I mean, taxi cab pitch when you're maybe heading out of the saloon or something?
Oh, despite my issues today, I've used MX in the past, and it always seems like it has so many little details, and the way they structure the packages. I know we talked about. It's so easy to pick and choose whatever you want, and then like Dolphin said, you can remaster the USB to your liking. So many little tools and tips that you can't really find in other distros in general. And I also wanted to highlight what Mitchell Valentino said, that sysv init development currently moved from Savannah to GitHub, for what it's worth. So if you're accustomed to the old repo, there's a new one now.
That's good to know. Excellent. Thank you so much. Dan, what is your taxi cab pitch?
Hey man, you got to check out this thing called MX Linux. It comes with absolutely everything, including the kitchen sink. You can't mess this distro up.
That's actually a lot coming from you, Dan.
If you do, the documentation is incredibly good. I mean, as I'm scrolling through here, I got storage, SSDs, MX Basic Tools. It tells you what all the tools do. Not only that, this great guy, Dolphin Oracle, has lots of videos to help you get through the rough times.
So,
So this
Dan,
is why you should actually take a look at this.
Dan, I want to point out that you are one to actually break the distributions. Like you actually you like to run them into like an embankment or into like a brick wall, and so that's a lot coming from you that you didn't crash
I like
it.
to break them.
Yeah.
But I come
Yeah,
up
I'm
with
just saying.
breaks and fix them.
My wife will tell you, Dan's the only one I was worried about tonight.
Yeah,
I said,
Dan likes to break
Kelly's going to
things.
be there, and I'm going to
I
be
do have some questions for you when we get past this taxi
Yeah, right.
cab. You'll like them.
That's awesome. All right,
The things
Colin.
that need to be pulled out, for a question.
Yeah, Colin, you're in a taxi cab.
All right.
What-
Am I in an
it's a-
elevator or I am in a taxi cab? Which one is
Well, this week it's a taxi cab because we're leaving because it's a random someone hops you're sharing a cab with somebody.
it? Okay,
Got
all right, taxi.
a few
If it
seconds.
was Colin and he was visiting his wife's family, it'd be a rickshaw. So
No, that's
You're in
true.
a horse carriage. You're in a horse carriage on your way to the saloon, and the road is blocked, so it's going to take a lot of time.
Well, it's MX Linux. Try it out. It's based on the most stable distro you can get, and you can pretty much get any application you need, and it's awesome, and it's got all the tools that you could expect to help you out.
That's cool. Let's
Try it out. And
That-
yes, back up what Dan said. Go and see Run with the Dolphin. Love watching his videos. It's always great to watch. He's always got these little tricks up his sleeve to show you what's going on. It's great.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I have to say that it's to me, MX Linux is like the what Debian should be as far as an experience is concerned. It's like like the term Debian plus plus. I think is a very good, a great term because you get those backports of like an updated kernel if you want it and updated bits and so forth. And it makes actually Debian, in my opinion, it makes Debian a great distribution. Like I would say it's got to be my favorite Debian base with bar none. Nothing against any others. I happen to enjoy it more. You feel a little more. It feels more like a race car. Have you ever been like if you're in a car where your butt's about 4 inches off the ground? It's kind of what it feels like. Everything's just like I feel like it grips your hardware and just goes with it. So that's my feel. It's not a luxury sedan. It's a sports car. So, what were you saying, Dolphin? You're
It
muted.
grips your hardware. That's a dangerous thing to say on the internet.
Well, there's that.
Okay.
Oops. So, anyway, did anybody else have anything they wanted to say about MX Linux?
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
Okay, I have it open here on my laptop instead of using a big long list because there's so much in here. I have to actually see it to compute with it, But I noticed when I shut the computer down, the brightness, this tray, because you click on that and it puts a little icon down on the panel. When you reboot the computer, it goes away. Is that normal?
Yeah, and I forget exactly why, but once you run it the first time, there should be if you go into sessions and start up or whatever. I don't know if you're on Plasma or XFCE, but both of them have a version of a startup file.
XFCE.
There should be a session startup on the auto start tab. There'll be a checkbox for it. You just click and check it.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Another thing I noticed is in the panel, in the items for the panel, there's this thing called Docklight Taskbar. Is that something you guys added or some plugin that was just recently developed for XFCE?
It's a recent plugin, and actually it's recently being incorporated into XFCE proper. It wasn't at the time we brought it in, but it's relatively recently being added to the official XFCE stuff. And what that is, that replaces the classic task list in the panel. So
Right.
where Firefox and the file manager are by default, you click on them and it acts more like the Windows 10 toolbar where the icons, you can lock them on the panel.
Yeah, I noticed by watching some other people's videos, they've used it, but they haven't figured out how to get it to work right where your icons on the panel that you got open and running, they're all the way over in the launch area, and the launch area is shifted down towards the right side.
Well, that's
And
if
you have
they
to go
flip
in
the
the
panel
items.
manually, they didn't move the separator.
Yeah, you go into the
It's
items for the
here.
panel and you move it down past the launchers.
That's why we got the flipper thing to flip it for
Right.
you to make it make sense. But the so basically you can right click on the stuff in the panel that's running, and you'll get an option to pin it to the dock and things like that. So it's just different. Instead of having the launcher plugins plus the running apps, we've got one thing holding all. And the Plasma desktop's actually the same way. The icons on the desktop there are part of the whatever the task list plugin is on Plasma. And that's actually a change. Even in Debian, it does that between Buster and Bullseye. That was a change. So we kind of adopted it for XFCE when the Plasma one was. That one went the other way. We went from Plasma to XFCE, and the Docklight guys. The guy in our forum, we on our package team, Swamp Rabbit, he really was a proponent of the Docklight plugin. So
once I figure out how to get it to work absolutely perfect by moving it down past the launchers and the list, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I don't know what your panel looks like, but it's just a plugin. You can move it with a right click. So
yeah, but you should try is right click on the plugin and look for in the panel settings.
Up here in the items for the panel
Yeah.
is where you move it around.
One of the separators should have the expand option checked. So that is what you should try to move around.
If it's hard to do from the panel, it can be hard for some people to right click and get the Docklight preferences on the panel. We added a button for it in Tweak on the panel tab. And it's also, you can get to it in the XFCE panel settings on the add-ins.
There's so much stuff in here. I got to that last after I did everything manually the hard way.
Yeah, we don't like manual.
No, actually, your manuals are really good. I started playing with the thing and started reading them, and I'm like, okay, I've been doing this wrong, and
so
this is really cool. And
yeah, well, it's interesting that you said that because like nobody catches the Docklight plugin, and I'm really glad you at least see it because it's new. It's new this time. We've updated it twice, and I really like it myself. It's really not a vertical panel because it takes the running apps take up less space.
Mm-hmm.
So.
When I first tried MX21 beta, I immediately noticed it because I've been using XFCE as my main desktop for a couple of months now, and my main gripe was that I could not pin applications to the window list, and I've been looking for a plugin that can do that. And when I looked at the desktop and I've seen that it actually does that, I was immediately trying to figure out, wait, is this a new extension? I was trying to get it to work on the distros I was using. So are you saying that Docklight is in the Bullseye repos, the official Bullseye repos as well?
It is not. It is in our repo. It will make it into Debian someday as part of XFCE, but I don't think it's there yet.
So it should be included in every distro that has XFCE.
I can't argue it. And if you in the settings, it's got some features. You know that arrow peak thing that Windows does, where you hover over the icon and it shows you a little picture of the app that's running. It'll do that too. We don't have it enabled by default, but you can enable it. It's a little flaky on old hardware, but it works great on anything within the last 7 years or so.
Well, I want to get to Penguin and real quick, and also Peter. Then we have to choose our next distribution. What's on the next cocktail? For Linux Saloon.
Mine was real quick. You can get that plugin if you pull it down from backports in Debian. It is in the backports. That's what repos, because I've done that on my other Debian stable, and it works great. So as long as you're pulling it down from the backports, it'll work.
Good to know.
Okay, Peter.
So mic check first. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, I had to change microphones. So I actually installed MX twice in the last week. At the end of last week's show, I installed it on a netbook, and that was 32-bit. And I chose Fluxbox. I've not tried Fluxbox in a long time. It worked great in the 12-year-old netbook. It works fantastic. I was very impressed with Fluxbox. So today, I actually had to use that machine for something else this week. So today I installed the 64-bit Fluxbox on my laptop. Works great again. One thing I really love about it is that most window managers, when you install software, you've got to go back and manually update the menu. MX does it for you. Thank you.
That's awesome.
That was the original version back in Buster didn't do that, and that was I hated that. But
Yeah.
I'm ancillary to the Fluxbox team. Jerry's kind of running the Fluxbox stuff, and antiX can do that. antiX has been able to do that for years. It uses Fluxbox as well. But it's all part of its own special desktop session sauce. I can't get into it because it's amazingly complicated. But somebody came in and wrote that little script for that. And then Jerry hooked it into app so that every time it runs an app, every time app does its thing, it updates it. If you do a D package install manually, it doesn't. But as long as it's app, it keeps going. But yeah, it's really handy. I like it.
Yeah. It turns a window manager into a desktop environment.
Yeah, I think the next Pi version is going to do that too. I don't think the previous one does, but the next one's going to. I think probably.
So it's no surprise to anybody, and I'm sure you're well aware of this, Dolphin, but MX Linux is ranked #1 on DistroWatch, and you have almost a 200-point lead over Endeavor OS. So congratulations.
Thank you. I actually thought Endeavor was going to pass us about now, but everybody just kind of stalled out. I think we're all waiting for Ubuntu to come out in April, so we're just kind of going to cruise for a while.
Well, I mean, I don't know how many bots you have running to do that, but good job. Well
I got Dan Kelly. I don't need any bots.
more powerful than a bot. He scares the transformers off. All right, so for our next distro cocktail, I have a few on the list. I'm gonna mark one of them off because we're missing somebody, so we're not gonna mention his distribution. But on the list right now that I have as suggested is Void Linux, doing Arch with the Arch installer since that's new-ish, Alpine Linux, antiX, but maybe I don't know if we just did MX, so I don't know if that's might be too soon. Arch Labs, and also one of my suggestions, Open Mandriva just had a release as well. So I'm not sure we haven't we've done RPM, done Deb, we haven't done Arch. I'm not a fan of Arch, but I'm not going to say no if that's what the Saloon wants. So thoughts?
I don't know where you go from there beyond the installer though, because that's just the thing is Arch isn't really, you're not going to get very much. I mean, because you're going to do the installer and maybe you pick your desktop environment, and you're doing a lot of it yourself. So the stuff we cover, like in terms of, the ease of use and like it's only like the first part of it, right?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
no, I got you.
Yeah.
So maybe that one needs to be planned out a little better.
Just Void. Yep. I like Void. It's a good distro to test out.
Okay.
Well, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but when you get to antiX, and you should, the one thing nobody really messed with this time around with MX was the live system. So if you ever do antiX, and I think you should someday, maybe not next, but someday, you should all not install it. You should all run it off of live USBs.
That's an interesting challenge.
And I sit behind the live USB system pretty strong. I can't remember if it's a Destination Linux interview or the Linux Spotlight interview with Rocco, but in one of those shows, I think it was actually Destination Linux, I ran antiX for the call. And I told the guys afterwards, I told them in the middle of the show, oh yeah, I'm running live right now. You've been running live for 2 hours? I've been running live all day, and don't turn it off. Keep that in mind. Sometimes when anybody does a distro review, you tend to get into your own sack of stuff, your own checklists and everything, and that's fine. Most people will know that. When you get into some of these weird ones, and I think Void probably qualifies a little bit too with some of the weird stuff. Get into why they're weird, why they're there. antiX isn't just systemd free; it's kind of live USB centered. The main developer, okay, is he a little bit communist? Maybe. Okay, I don't want to hear about it. I'm telling you right now, don't read the links if you don't want to. I don't want to hear about it. But the live system's awesome. It runs, Pete, it'll run fantastic on that netbook. I run antiX on all my netbooks because of that. XFCE is too heavy. You use something else. Run it live. Don't even install it. Just run it live. There's your challenge for antiX whenever you get to it. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Go do your thing, but run antiX live. You'll be glad you did.
Are you talking about the persistent live antics or just antics live in general? Because I've seen when I tried MX that in the MX USB writer, there's a special option for MX and antics ISOs that if you write to the USB using that, it will be a persistent, not a read only.
Yes, the live system's got all kinds of tricks, and they're identical to MX. You got your MX ISO laying around. Antix is more or less the same. I think the current Antix release is actually shipped with 2 kernels, just in case, because they got that old PC focus going on over there. So they got the 510 and a 4.9, I think, because IDE sucks on anything after 4.9. Just saying.
That's interesting to know.
For my part, I'll say that I've never really done anything with Void. I'm looking at the website now, and I mean, I don't know anything about Void. Somehow it's escaped me.
Is there anything visible?
A
Have we got the
smudge.
space to do Void? Have we got the space for that?
I have a lot of Void.
I fell into a void.
I mean, I think it's just go ahead.
Just to answer your question and stuff like that, Void Linux, the package manager runs almost like Arch's does. And it is a rolling release. And I believe they have something like 9 desktop environments you can choose from, ranging from GNOME all the way to like, I believe, what was it, Enlightenment, WM, and stuff like that. They have some rather, but I think it's a great distribution if you like rolling releases.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just
know.
for my own part. I mean, I think this is interesting. I've never really spent any time with it. So, and outside of Void, I would say maybe Mandriva would be the second choice for me.
But what I would say is that Void has a very nice anchor installer, which I really like. So it kind of the opposite as Arch, because with Arch you have hard time setting it up, but then it's simple to run because you don't have much single stuff on the system. With Void you have a really nice installer experience, unless you want to get into stuff like ButterFS or encryption, in which case you have to do a manual chroot installation. But after you are done, I suggest if we go with Void, I would suggest everyone to try the base ISO. Then you can install any desktop you want. The only official ISO of the DE right now is XFCE. Is that the package manager is very unique and interesting, and it even has an option for building from source, and they have a source repo. So I think it's interesting to explore.
Well, those are our
Also,
pitches.
yeah.
So I guess let's we'll have it down to Void and Open Mandriva. So we'll do a how many people are in favor of Void? 1, 2, 3. That looks like about half. Eric said, all right, well, cool. So Void it is, and then we'll kick Mandriva down for another time. So Dolphin, I want to personally thank you so much for being here. You fielded a lot of questions. It's a great, I don't know if it's a PR stunt for you, but it worked out great I enjoyed anyway.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for looking at MX. I can't think of a better group of guys to throw comments out. And yeah, thanks for letting me interrupt every last one of you. I'm sorry about that, but I really appreciate it.
And I
we
want
love
to
having you on.
Thank
Yeah,
you for being here with us and answering some of our questions and listening to our comments.
Yeah, and there's just a few minutes left in the show, and I wanted to I'd like to hear some feedback from you on this, Dolphin, since I haven't heard anything on this. But kind of what's big in the news right now for a lot of people that are in the gaming sphere of things is the Steam Deck. So, is there anyone in the MX team that you know of that's getting that put down on a Steam Deck that's going to be running MX Linux on it?
I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me. We're big Steam fans. I do all my gaming on Linux on Steam. Well, except for MechWarrior 2, which still runs in DOSBox off my original CDs. Got a video on it. Check it out on my channel. But Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, and I've been eyeballing them, but I hope it's a big success because it's going to be great for everyone, and more stuff on that it works on that Steam Deck, the more it's going to work everywhere else.
That's awesome. Well, they just released, as in Steam just released, or Valve I should say, the CAD files for the external shell of the Steam Deck, which I think is
saw that.
great. And and what I think is awesome about that is, so if someone's to make their own 3D print their own case or accessories or goofy things on it, that's all, they can pretty much do whatever they want at this point. And I think that's a great strategy, really. I'm just releasing it open like that. I mean, who would have thought that would have happened?
Well, it's certainly getting them press in the Linux tech community. And we're going to be their biggest fans. I mean, I just really hope this thing works great, because this is a handheld PC, people. That's going to run everything. Hopefully. I can't wait to hear you guys talk about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I had the same exact. I'm not a big gamer, but I see that, and as soon as I saw it, I thought, okay, this is going to be a very powerful, very portable little computer. What can we do with this? Like, there's so many things I can think of that you could do with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, whoever's got a 3D printer, if I ever get one, I'm gonna call you because I want a bright red case. And,
I have a 3D printer.
I guarantee you they won't ship with a bright red case.
I want beige. I want like a khaki beige to make it.
You would. You want it to look just like the Commodore 64.
Yes.
I know what you want.
Nate is so transparent.
It's
beige and green. Yeah. I think the Army ruined me. Well, so we didn't hear from a couple of people here, so this is kind of our last call segment. I want to make sure that, like, I have not heard from Max. You've been sitting in here and you've been absolutely quiet. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to throw out there, because we're right at the end of this thing, and I just want to make sure you had a shot to say something.
Yeah, first time getting to join since the name change, but I'm liking how everything new is looking. I didn't get any time to try MX Linux. The big tech thing in my life is through work I just got an old server cabinet that was being thrown out, and I'm starting to take apart all that gear, and it was good seeing Dolphin answer all the questions tonight. And I'm always finding I haven't found a good niche for MX in my life, but it's a distro I really appreciate and always like to learn about. But,
That's great. Yeah. So I'm hoping you're going to share some pictures with the class, at some point in time, in the Telegram, whatever, of your server project, because it sounds
already, but I'll upload some more later.
Yeah, be good. I like when people share their things, and someone else can learn from it. All right, and so Steve, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. for us Eastern folks. Are you doing your coffee? Clash?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
It's going to be kind of a open discussion. We're going to talk about some of the updates that's going on in Peppermint in just a couple of weeks that it's been out. Some really good news. And I want to say that two of the guys down here have been added as trusted user. Boy, are we screwed. But a lot of good things happening in the realm of Peppermint. And I want to finally add, Dolphin, thank you for your guidance in that there, and that's what makes, like MX. It was like when Mark with Peppermint, they made Peppermint. Dolphin makes MX. So your help is awesome, sir.
Well, I was mostly a sounding board back in the early days, but them guys are doing their thing and they're doing just fine. So I'll be poking my head in.
Appreciate it. And we'll talk about some other news that come up during the week. Just kind of a free form tomorrow morning.
Good deal. And then tomorrow also is Destination Linux is streaming live at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can check that out. Linux User Space just released their MX Linux review of MX Linux. So if you have not listened to that, check it out. Leo's got a lot of great history on there, and it's some really good banter as well as typical.
Great conversation.
Yep. I really enjoyed that podcast. And also, you can check me out at Linux Out Loud And if you care, I have a bunch more nonsense at cubiclenate.com. Is there anybody else that has anything going on that they want to plug before we
Rick?
turn off? Oh, Rick. That's right, Rick. I'm so sorry. I apologize. Wednesday,
problem.
you're probably going to be installing Void Linux, and I missed you this past week. I was had other things going on, but
Yeah.
but so Wednesday you're probably gonna be installing, doing a live install of Void Linux, and we can all poke at you on
Yeah.
real time. Okay.
Tell me
That's
how
great.
bad I'm doing, all that good stuff.
So check Rick out. He has a YouTube channel, and he actually has a really good video on the teardown of the framework laptop that I think people should check out as well. So Rick, and anything else? Dolphin, have you got any new videos coming out?
I don't know, maybe, probably. Yeah, I got some stuff gestating, but we're in the middle of dev cycle, so I gotta think for a bit. But I will say this: MX Linux, the community, older than the distro. We built it for them. The fact that everybody else, that a lot of people seem to like it too, just icing on the cake. So thank you.
Excellent. And thanks again for being here. And I want to thank you all for being part of the conversation in both the Zoom meeting and in the YouTube stream, as well as everyone watching the show after the fact. I want to thank everyone involved in making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back into personal computer. Thank you for stopping by, and be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yas.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, 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 bye.
Thanks for watching, sweetie.
Later.
Later.
Thanks to the MX team. You guys did a great job.
Bye.